Hello everyone, I hope you're well. I'm popping by to create a card inspired by my snippets. So I've thoroughly enjoyed doing snippet 87 and 88. I love the simplicity of the techniques. So I thought I would create a card based on the techniques that I've done for 87 and 88. And you can find those videos on my YouTube channel just previously. Let's just move those out of the way. So I'm going to create a card now. So I've got a piece of Pink Frog smooth card, super smooth card, 300 GSM. And just like the snippets, it's 4 inches by 6 inches. And I think what I'm going to do is use one of the stencils. So I think I'm going to use snippet stencil SS8 called Lightbulb. And I'm going to use that one. And I'm going to start, I should have got my brushes out, but there you go. I'm going to use one of my blending brushes. And I'm going, just like I've done with the snippets, I'm going to use, let me move them out of the way. Don't know why I didn't put that back actually, but there you go. I'm going to use the prize ribbon ink like I did with the snippets. And as you can see, I've not tidied up because all my mess is just still here. So I'm going to take the prize ribbon. I'm going to apply the ink. And I'm going to make sure, as you can see, on the blending brushes here, there's not enough ink on there. There's hardly any ink. So I'm just going to make sure I've got a really good application of that ink. So let's just, can you see the ink, the depth of the ink building up on the blending brushes? There we go, I've got a reasonable layer of ink there. Do I want it there? Do I want it here? Or do I want it there? Let's have it here a little bit like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply the ink just around the edge of the light bulb. And you can see that I've not used any low tack tape. I'm just adding a little bit of ink just around the edges, just so that I have that shape. We could spritz that with water and add that to another card as well. So now I've got the shape of the light bulb. So let's do a little bit of colouring, and there's no rush. So we'll add a little bit of the prize ribbon onto our non-stick craft sheet, just so that I've got that. Some water, and we'll just, I've got some kitchen roll here, well used kitchen roll, but we've got some kitchen roll there. Just if I've got too much water, I can take a little bit off. And because we've added the Distress Oxide ink on there, that's reactive to water. So what we can do is we can drag that colour out really nicely. We can drag the colour out, especially if you've got enough water on your brush. You can just drag a little bit of that colour out. I can also pick a little bit of colour up, and I can just drag out further should I wish. So I'm going to go on this side just to soften it with some water. Just drag that out, and I can just soften the edges just with a little bit of my water. And the water becomes slightly tinted. That's absolutely fine. And we can continue to add more depth to this. So you can pick up more of the prize ribbon, and we can go in. Can you see how much darker that is by picking up the neat colour? So I've picked up that neat colour, and you can see it's moving here because we've got that moisture on there. And it's a nice easy way just to add some colour. You can completely clean your brush, take off the excess, and then you can just sort of dab the water just on the edges of there, just so that it wicks out nice and gently. So we can add some of that dark colour again, just on the edges. And because we've got water on that design, it'll start to wick out, and you can just touch the edges of that dark edge. Just touch the edges of it with some water, and it'll start to wick out really nicely, and it gives a really sort of natural feel to that. So you can sort of keep touching. Now, the longer you can give that to wick out, the better it actually looks. You can just give it as long as possible just to wick out. Now, if I dry this with my heat tool, it will stop that wicking out. And what I like about that is that you get a really natural feel to your colouring, but you can see how much moisture is on there quite easily. So what I'm going to do then, normally what I would do is I'd grab a piece of scrap paper and I'd just create sort of a bit of a landline. You can actually make these out of acetate if you wish. You could quite easily do it out of acetate and just blend some colour. But what I'm going to do is I'm just sort of going to do it freehand. So I'm going to sort of just add a little bit of freehand sort of grounding, if you like. Just a little bit of grounding. And I'm just going to touch this with water like so, just so that it's sort of, can you see I'm doing nothing technical, but if I just add some of the tinted water now, it will just cause that to wick out a little bit more. You can use clean water, it doesn't have to be tinted water, but it will just make that wick out a little bit more naturally. And if you want, you can continue adding a little bit more darkness here and there, just to give a little bit of grounding. You're not doing anything rocket science like, you're just adding a little bit of grounding. And you can see that water is now very tinted blue. Just touch with your water. Okay, just so it's a little bit more natural. You can also tilt that a little bit like so and spritz a little bit with water. But obviously, if you spritz, your light bulb is going to move as well. But I like that. I like a little bit of movement. If you don't like doing it that way, you can take a little bit of water and just like we did in the snippets, just flick with your hands. Just give it a little light flick with your hands. And can you see that that is wicking out really nicely to give a really sort of natural feel to that? You can, there's also other ways you can move it. You can just dab and just add water just so that it moves a little bit more, whichever way works for you. What we're going to do is, because I've flicked water like I normally do, just absolutely everywhere. Now, for me personally, it's always better if you can give this plenty of time without drying it, because it just looks a little bit more natural. And it just looks sort of a little bit more watery, just if you can just give it a little bit of time. And I do love how the centre takes effect as well. And you can dry this at any stage that you wish, or you can let it dry completely naturally. Let's grab the heat tool. Now, I'm always going to recommend that you let it dry naturally, because you keep that intensity of colour. But if you're demonstrating like me, sometimes you need to hurry that along a little bit, just so that you can do the next step. So we're just going to give that a little bit of a dry. And that will stop that from moving now. It will stop moving. But you can see, obviously, my card starts to bend. So I'm just going to go from the back as well. Try it a little bit more. But the good thing is we can quite easily add more or less ink, because we can actually take ink away, as I've shown you in the snippets. You can also take that ink away. Let's just bend that card a little bit, and you can see there's still moisture on there. I've not dried that completely. So what I can do is then, I was going to say use some dry kitchen towel, but my kitchen towel is far from completely dry. But I love how it wicks out. So let's grab, where's that stamp set now? Can't remember whether it's on its own, whether it's in other stamp sets. Nobody knows. Let's have a look. There it is. So I'm going to use stamp set TE23 Winter Delights. We'll just take that little bit of plastic off. And we've got these lovely little penguins, which I just adore. So let's, I've got that many acrylic blocks out. It's like I'm not putting this away yet, because I'm trying to keep it in case I want, well, I know I will want to add more colour, so I don't know who I'm kidding, just for when I want to add more colour. So I'm going to use my black ink, my Nocturne VersaFine Clair, and now I'm going to add a little bit of stamping. Do I want, let's add him here, like so, not here with a H. So I'm just adding my little penguin, and the reason I'm just holding it there is to give that a little bit of time just to make sure that it makes a good impression. I'm then going to add a little penguin here. So let's take this little penguin here. So I'll add that little penguin there, like so. There we go. And I don't have to hold that on as long, because we haven't got that Distress Oxide ink there. So I'm going to take my little brush, and you can see I've only used sort of oxide ink. So I'm going to take up that watery little bit there, and I'm just going to, can you see I've just touched that, and then I'm taking all the ink off, and then just to make it a little bit more natural, I'm just adding a little bit of the tinted water, and then I'm going to add a tiny bit of that watered down colour just on here. Let's take that off and just blend that out. You don't need much, but you can just add a little bit. So what I'm going to do then, I will add something else here at the top as well. I'm just going to add a little bit more depth of colour now. So what I love is I've now got that wicked out area, and I'm picking up the very dark, neat colour to add some more definition to that light bulb. So you can see now it's got a very rigid line. And if I use this tinted water, dab the excess off, what I love is I can still move the colour. I can move that colour, keep that dark edge, use the tinted water just to blend that out. And you can blend it out to nothing, but it just gives that a bit of a darker edge. And if I wanted to, I could flick that with water again and wick that out a little bit more. You can add a little bit more touch of dimension just around the edge here. And if you don't like doing it this way, sort of quite freehand, you can put the stencil back over again. But what I'm trying to show you is the versatility of your stamps and stencils. And you don't need many other products, and you can just get a really lovely effect. So we can bring a little bit of this out so that we've got some shading, and we can add some black later. So we can just add a little bit of this tinted water just here, like so. And then we can add something towards the top. So we'll take our, hopefully it's in here, our holly and berries, which is TE21. So we've got our holly and berries. So we can just take that. Let's grab our little acrylic block, and I'm just going to take my Morning Mist VersaFine Clair, which I just love. So this is a permanent ink pad. So I'm going to take the Morning Mist, and I'm going to add some of those sort of berries, first generation and second generation. I love the second generation with the VersaFine Clair in the Morning Mist. I do love that second generation. So we'll take the Morning Mist again. This time we'll add it a little bit further down, like so. The first generation, second generation, third generation. Just makes it look a little bit more natural. Just cleaning a little bit of that mess up as we go along. And then I'm going to take, where's my smaller light bulb. So I'm going to take the smaller light bulb, which is on TE24. I try and remember to put the acetate back, mainly because I know how many hours I end up searching for acetate. It's hilarious. So I can take the smaller little light bulb, and then I have nowhere to put everything. Let's move that morning mist and the black and start to search for prize ribbon. So I'm going to take the prize ribbon just like we did with the snippet, and just add a little bit of that blue ink. And we can add, let's add this one here, like so. And then, shall we add one down here? So we can then take the ink again and just go round the little light bulb. Come in again, like so. Just remember, just to give your stamps a little bit of a wipe when you're using that oxide ink, mainly because if you come then back to it and add your VersaFine Clair over the top and you've got that oxide ink layer on there, it will affect your stamping. So just remember to give that a little bit of a clean. So I'm going to then just add a little bit of the blending. You can take your colour off. Always have your kitchen roll just on one side, because you can just, you've got control, more control, if you don't add too much water initially. And I love this because it's a very controlled way to colour, plus it doesn't take much for it to look good. It's wonderful. And we are going to add more shading, etc., to the background as well, and obviously we will ground these a little bit as well. So you could mop that up, this blue ink, with your another piece of card, but I want to add, just like we did with the snippets, some of the vintage photo. So I need to make sure that my brush is cleanish, and then I'm going to add that vintage photo. Now again, you're working, there's plenty of blue on there because my kitchen roll is not clean. Let's get some clean. Now what you need to remember is you're working with Distress Oxide inks, so they move. So some of that blue, just like it did in the snippet, it's going to move. Excuse me. I think I've done too much talking. So you're going to add a little bit of the brown just around your pieces. Now, don't worry if that blue moves a little bit, just like the snippets. It just adds to the overall natural feel. Now, we don't have to worry about the grey, because the grey is a permanent ink pad. So we can literally go over with our translucent colour, because we've watered it down, so it's not as opaque. Obviously, Distress Oxides have got a dye pigment fusion, so because of that pigment, they have an opaque quality because of that pigment, that dye pigment quality. But because I am just diluting everything down, I'm just going straight over the, I'll spit it out in a minute. I'm going straight over the morning mist. But here, the minute I touch that blue, it's going to wick out, which is what I like it doing. So I can add a little bit more. That tinted water just helps to blend things. You can pick up then the darker colour and you can go in a little bit darker if you wish, just around some of those light bulbs. Can you tell I can't get the words between light bulbs and baubles and poor thing. What I can do now is just add a little bit more depth around the edges. So I've got the neat colour here, and I can just go around with that neat colour. Now don't forget, I have, what do I have? I have very little water on there, but because the water is on the background of the card, it means that that will still wick out a little bit, which makes it more of a natural look. There we go. And I just love this look. We're just going around there, a little bit darker, just around these light bulbs. And you can see where the card is drier and not as wet around these smaller light bulbs. And you can see where the card is drying because you can see that it isn't moving as much. So to aid that movement, we're going to take, just like with the snippets, you're going to flick the background just with flicks of water. It's more natural if you do it this way. It just moves a little bit more. You can also take some clean water, and if you've got some edges, just make sure the water touches some of those edges so that they actually move. You want them to move, you want them to wick out, just so that it looks more natural. And you want some of that blue to wick out as well, again, so that that looks more natural. So you want that to wick out a little bit. Now again, I'm wasting ink because you could mop this up with another piece of card should you wish, but I'm just going to clean that up at the moment. Or you could do it on an acrylic block and then you can keep going back to it. So again, I'm going to clean my brush because I want some clean water, and then I'm going to take the prize ribbon, add a little bit of that prize ribbon. So I'm going to pick it up. You can see how watery that is, and I'm just going to add a little bit of grounding just underneath. Now, don't forget, I can add a little bit of my grey Inktense pencil as well, just to give that a little bit more. But because we started this off here, it's just more natural. And I can flick this with water so it just gives it a more natural feel. And I will go in with my Inktense pencil just to add some more definitive shading. Once you're happy with that movement, you can dry it with your heat tool, or you can blot that with your kitchen towel. It's entirely up to you. If you've got water like me that's moving and flowing on there, the minute you put the heat tool on, it will move it a little bit. If you want to stop, let me just grab my kitchen roll, not that this is clean, but if you want to stop any movement, dab that first so that it stops the initial movement of all that water, dabs up the ink, and then you can dry it. But I do like the softer feel when you spritz and splatter with your finger with your hands with water. So let's dry from the back. The one thing I can't emphasize enough is that you really need top quality cardstock and something that allows that water to move. You could do this on watercolor card if you wish, because we haven't stamped, well, I have stamped the penguin, but you could easily cut that out, because if you stamp onto watercolor card that's got those raised areas, obviously you won't get a perfect image. So just, there we go. Just wonderful. Right, I'm going to take the, this is what happens when you have so many things out, the Lightbulb stencil, which is SS8, and you have the cutout piece as well. So I can just put this in here like so. Now I want to add some little detailing, but I don't want it to be, you know, like really thick regimented lines. I want it to still have that sort of watery movement. So obviously I'm going to add white here. So I'm just going, can you see the brown is now, we've got all that water on there. Bring this in. You can take any excess off if it's a little bit too much. And we can just bring in a little bit of detail. Just soft detail with the brown, just to bring a little bit of that detail in with the vintage photo. Can you see that I'm adding layers of that colour? So if we lift it up, you can see you're just adding in a little bit of that detail, especially if you place it back in the right place. But you don't need much ink, just to make sure that it's got a little bit of, she says, as she just drops the brush, a little bit of definition. Now I'm not going to add, let's add a little bit more ink. What's hilarious is I put the heating on because I was cold, and now I'm absolutely boiling. Let's lift that up now, just so that you can see I've got a little bit of definition in there now. I will add my touches of white, but I've got a little bit of definition in there. I'm going to add a little bit of definition to the stamped piece because I can see the lines where the stamp has been. Just adding a little bit, but I want these to be quite watery, but just to give a little bit of that definition. Let's just wipe this up. And again, if you prefer the softer look, you can still take your water and flick it onto those, or try and aim it onto those brown areas that you've just added just so that they've got that sort of watery feel. And you can keep doing that, but it just means that what you're doing is softer. A little bit of blue there, but it's a little bit softer. It softens everything that you're doing. Let's just give that a little bit of a dry. And you can see my card's curling and moving, so let's just turn that over. I don't know why I'm holding it up. I can just do it just like this, just to flatten it out a little bit. But this is why you really need a card that can take. But can you see what I mean about this? It looks a little bit more watery, and it just adds to that. And for me, I really like that. There we go. So I'm going to take the darker prize ribbon, and I've got brown on my brush. Can you see how much pigment is still on that brush? Obviously you can have your jar of water and you can just make sure that you rinse your brush. So I'm just adding a little bit of definition so that you can see that that line goes all the way across. Again, I'll just soften it just a little bit. Honestly, I could play like this for hours. Absolutely hours. There we go. Just works so nicely. Let's just give that blue a little bit of a rinse. Again, if you've got your jars of water, it's perfect. So what I'm going to do now is use my Inktense pencil just to sort of give a little bit more shading down here. And I'm just going to do one area at a time. You can see I never sort of rush what I'm doing, and just let's just drag that out a little bit, just so that it's a little bit more grounded. And again, with the Inktense pencil, you want it a little bit darker. Just rub that against your, now don't forget this is a wet base. It's not completely dry. Now the Inktense pencil is Chinese ink. I think it was 2030 or something. It's called Chinese ink anyway. And then we're going to add, let me see if I can pick a little bit of the grey up here and just add, because I don't want much, but by picking a little bit of this up here, I can just add it here and just soften that a little bit, just so that it looks a little bit more grounded, if that makes sense to you. Just soften that out a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading around here. And I love the fact that these little ones are really sort of watery. They're not. Move that. I like the fact they're softer and more watery. I just Love that. So then I'm going to add a little bit of my Inktense pencil just to draw the line in, just so that they look a little bit more like they are hanging. And then I'm just going to soften that line a little bit by just adding a touch of water to that Inktense. Just means that we've got on there. And then I want a little bit of text. So you know, I was going to say that I was going to use the TE11, but you can also use the text that is on the TE23, because it's all about sort of seasons and winter, and it's a lovely text. So I've got that many stamps out now. Now I've put a little arrow so I know which way it goes up. Now in my snippets, I stamped with the vintage photo, but on this one, I'm going to use my VersaFine Clair Morning Mist. And I don't know why I've put it on the acrylic block. I find that if I take it off the acrylic block, my stamping's a little bit more looser, more natural. So I'm going to add a little bit of stamping there, and I'm pressing very lightly. Just adore this. And I can see the word cold and bare for bare branches. So let's just stamp a little bit of text. And this sort of pushes everything back, the, what's he called, penguin and everything. But by using it off my acrylic block, just makes it a little bit more freeing, a little bit more natural, because you don't get a perfect stamping. And that adds to the looseness of the design. A little bit there, let's add a little bit here. Just really adds to that. And you can see when I went direct to the ink pad, which I don't recommend, but if you do, don't squish it down, because your ink is going to seep into those sort of open areas of your stamp. Just adore it. There we go. And Tracy added that little text stamp because my DT member Lucy wanted some text that was talking about sort of the winter season that you could add to your seasonal makes as well. Just so that you can see that. I absolutely, oh, I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. And I think I'm going to carry this line on a little bit further. And it's one of the advantages of having sort of a camera, because you can re-look at your artwork. Let's add a little bit more. And you can just add more details based on what you can see through that camera. And that's better. It's just a little bit more grounded. And I really just like that. I love that. Just love it. So, just going to add, let's just rinse this now, because I need to get a little bit. Oh no, I can use my little pencils, can't I? I could use Distress Oxides, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my Inktense pencils. I'm going to use the Pale Vermilion, which is a bit of an orange colour. I'm going to add a touch of orange just here. It's to be honest, you can do it with your Distress Oxides. Don't worry too much. And I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow, lemon yellow, just to give a little bit of colour. And you do know how much I faff. I'm still going to go back and just add another. If these pencils were sharpened, it would be so much easier trying to get into that little space, but I do like to make it difficult for myself. But I do want it to be visible that I've just added that little bit of colour. You could also, when you're using the light bulb, if you use your pencil, I mean, I'm not going to do it on here, but you could sort of put rays of the yellow going out so that it, you know, you've got that shine if you wished. Right. You could eat, let's just take the water. I really need some clean kitchen roll, but you can make sure that you have got, I don't know whether it'll work, because you can just drag a little bit of the colour out, just so that you've got that. Oh yes, it's removing, just so that you've got more of that lightness in your bulb. You could even just sort of add, it's not going to show up here, but if you had loads of dark colour, you could remove sort of rays, just so that it started to shine. But you could, there we go. But you just remove some of that colour. Let me have a look now. Oh yes, just giving the penguin a little bit more of that grounding. And what I'm going to do then, where are we? Where's my stamp? I've got my little, oh, do I want the holly? This is where, when you've got your stamps, it's nice if you can just, yes. So I'm going to use a little piece of scrap paper now, just across this line. And I'll just use a piece that's torn so it's a little bit more natural. And then, oh, let's grab another acrylic block like you do. Another acrylic block. And I'm going to use, yes, let's use black. Yeah. I'm going to use my black ink. Keep that along there. And let's hope we can keep, do I want it shorter? No. Now I want it inside the light bulb, do you know? I don't even know whether I've cut one of these light bulbs out. I cut that many things out and not out. It's just, let's have a look. How many things can one person have cut out? That was the little one. I think it's only the little light bulbs I've cut out. Yeah. So, not to worry. Let's place these all at the base. Look how many pieces I've got here. Let's see. This is how many masks I've got. So let's just take the scrap paper that we've got. After I've just inked the stamp up, it takes me ages now. Let's just go around the light bulb. Not with that because it's not sharp enough. Just create a little mask. Now, you could say, well, Tracy, you've got the stencil. Yes, you've got the stencil, but that mylar that I have the stencils cut out of is quite thick, which will cause a lip when you come to stamp. So therefore, you'll have a gap. So I just need it cutting. What am I doing? There's no hope for me. It's actually the inside that I want. Oh, good grief. There's no hope, is there? Poor soul. It's actually the inside that I need cutting away. I don't know whether I'll be able to do it now. It's the inside so that I can cut, so that I can stamp inside. And I'm such a drip that I've cut it away, so I may not be able to do it now. I don't think I will. Oh. Right, let's do it again. Stencil, concentrate, which I wasn't. It's actually piercing the inside that I want. Poor Tracy, poor little brain's not working. There we go. So that I've got the aperture is what I wanted, just like you would a stencil. But I need the aperture to have no thickness so that it's flat. There we go. So now I've got that aperture. So then I can protect the edge of the bauble. So let's ink that again with black. It'll probably still be wet enough, but let's ink that with black. And let's just cut this. Let's cut that so it's not in our way. Place this over here, like so. Ink the holly again, because I've been faffing so much. Oh, I'm doing it again, aren't I? So I want that line there. And you too can faff for England like Tracy's doing. So I want that there, like so. So I've got lots of moisture on the card. I've just got my copier paper, which has got no thickness, unlike my stencil. Let me just lift this up. My stencil's got thickness to it. So if I tried to stamp through that at the edge where I'm stamping now, then that would cause me a little bit of an issue. So let's just, yay. So now let me make sure my hands are clean. We'll just turn the holly upside down. But now I've got that little bit of holly inside the light bulb, but it's not got any gaps because the copier paper's got no thickness to it. So that is wonderful. We can add our touches of white, just like so. And while we're here, let's add the touches of white to these areas, just to give those little dots. You could use dots of white paint if you wished. Just to add those, you can add your touches of white to your watery light bulbs. And you're going for that soft sort of watery feel. And of course, Tracy could spend ages just adding touches. you can also add sort of touches of your white Posca pen, or you could add some glitter if you wished. It's entirely up to you. If you want to add little bits of glitter. I'm just adding these dots of Posca pen. Just love that. Let's just add a little bit of white to our penguins because I like doing that. Oh, I did that, didn't I? Just so that you can see. Just lovely. I just love it. So what we can do to echo the fact that we've got this holly on here. Now we stamped these in grey, remember? So now I can take my black ink, which will make this uppermost. And now I can add the holly in the black over the top, which I just adore. I love doing that. I love doing layered stamping. And I always ink the whole stamp because you never know which area you're going to use. So I ink the whole thing. I think I want a little bit there. So we'll just ink that area again. And that pushes the grey back. Again, you would let this dry, but I'm going to go in with the white again, just to emphasize a little bit more those touches of white, just because it emphasizes that a little bit more. And then as the card dries, I would come back in and just sort of re-emphasize that those little details. And unfortunately, I'm terrible. I can't help myself adding more little touches of the white. It's just addictive. Just, I love it. You can see where it's still wet. And then I'm going to add some splatters because I do love my splatters. There we go. Just wipe that area again. Now, I often spend a little bit of time, so it's up to you whether you want to add it to a black mat, which really makes everything pop. Let's just bring this in and then add it to your card blank, or whether you add it straight to a white card. I quite like this piece on the black. So I'm going to add this to the black mat. So the actual card piece that we worked on was 4 by 6. The black mat is 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. Now, if your card is too curled for you, you can easily put it between 2 books. You can iron it. Not that I would ever want to iron, but if you want to and make it flat, or like me, you just have a little bit of patience bending that card till it sticks down. Make sure that your hands are clean, which mine are far from clean, just as you're going around and just adhering the card. On in this instance, that black mat really sort of finishes. And don't forget to rub the centre of your card, just so that you don't get any bubbles. But that really finishes that off. I'm then going to add this just to a white card blank. The card blank is 5 inches by 7 inches. You could add an insert to that as well. This could quite easily be for a winter birthday. Let's just add that. And I want to add a word. So let's have a little look at what we've got. With warmest wishes. I just think that's enough. With warmest wishes. So we'll use that. Now, you wouldn't stamp when you've put all the card together. You would normally do that earlier. And if you're going to, make sure that that's going to stay on there. There we go. Don't want it up there. See, there's several places on here that it will look nice. So if I'm unsure, look through the camera, and it really helps just to decide. I think it's going to go down there. So I'm going to add with warmest wishes, just here. And what you're going to do is you're not going to press really hard. You're just going to give that a few moments just to sort of grab onto the surface. And this is when these little sentiments come into their own, when you only want a little bit of something on the card and it's not too overpowering. And I'm not actually going to add shading under that. I've got the shading here and I just want that to look different. And I'm really pleased with that. Really pleased with it. So I hope you've enjoyed that demonstration and you'll give it a go. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.